everybody, and thank you for joining me for the podcast. This is episode number 6, and tonight I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently. The guests that I originally had scheduled for tonight, I postponed until next week, so I'll be doing the show solo tonight. Also, no video, so if you tuned in on the website or on YouTube to look at my ugly face, you're going to have to either wait till next week or rewatch one of the earlier episodes. Before I get started, I wanted to give credit where credit was due. If you guys have not listened to Dan Carlin's podcast, Hardcore History, or his other one called Common Sense, I highly recommend that you do. The amount of work and research that he puts into his podcast about history is absolutely amazing. The way he articulates the history, you know what, I really relate to it because in my head, I just got a bunch of scrambled words, and I swear, listen to his podcast. He helps me put those words into sentences. So I get a lot of benefit from listening from his research. But again, it's like what they say. If you got something in common with somebody, of course, it's a lot easier to kind of enjoy what they're saying. So you guys might not like it, but I asked, take a look at it with an open mind and definitely check it out. I do warn you, though, if you think my podcasts are long, his are about 3 times as long as mine. So his podcasts are roughly 4 hours. All right, so let's begin. I grew up, born in the late 70s, grew up in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and so on. No great war for me. The life, what my parents saw was not what I had to live through. So when I see the hate growing in this country, and hate might be a strong word, I see it really destroying the country from within. I mean, if you look into Roman history, know how Rome fell. I do not see the United States falling like that. I mean, we are way too advanced. We're built differently. We're stronger than the other countries on this planet. I just don't see that happening. But what I do see happening, which I believe is happening, is that we're destroying ourselves from within, with beginning to hate one another. And you got to understand, when you start believing your own people are the enemy, that's when the downfall pretty much starts. And if you don't think you're seeing this in some of these rallies that we're seeing for the Democratic and Republican parties, I would love to get your views on what you believe is going on, because I've never seen anything like that. When people getting physical, being televised as way. I mean, women getting assaulted like they were. I mean, what do you expect? You got people getting attacked. What are you going to do? You're going to go to the rally. You're going to come with a gun. That's common sense for me, because you want to go to this rally. You know people getting beat up. You want to protect yourself. But then where does that go from there? It just escalates, and it's insane to actually see. When that woman was getting attacked, eggs getting thrown on her, I mean, that was absolutely disgusting. So again, I can see, when you start believing that your neighbor is the enemy, we're in big trouble. And I really don't see how this is going to turn around, because I put up a Pew graph GIF on my Twitter page, and it shows between 2004 and 2014 the division between Democrats and Republicans, or liberals and conservatives. And you can just see how this was brewing for the past couple of years. I mean, it didn't start with Trump, so don't believe that it started with Trump, because if you look at the chart, it really kicked in roughly 2010, 2011. And I admit, when Trump entered the race, I was enjoying it. I thought it was hysterical that he was getting all this press, that he was getting all this traction, and because he was turning the industry, the establishment upside down on its head. I mean, the GOP was freaking out, and I thought it was great. Where I am now, I'm over it big time. And I look over on the Democratic side, and I'm not happy either. You looked at Bernie Sanders, he was winning the populist vote. And the fact that these super delegates are changing, are skewing the votes. It's insane. I mean, what's the point of primaries? The primaries are for the populace to vote, but that is obviously not the fact or what's being seen in the Democratic. So what's the wool getting pulled over whose eyes? I mean, this is democracy that they said. So what's the point of the primaries? I mean, I read something on CNBC where one of the GOP guys was like, look, the people don't decide who runs for president. We do, and then you vote on them. This is not from some conspiracy theory website. You can Google it. Yeah, this is off CNBC, CNN, things of that, from them as well. And so again, it's happening on both sides of the continent right now. And what drives me nuts is that this division, it's being spoon-fed to society from every angle. I mean, I look at the media, the news as entertainment business because I believe it's really provoking this. I mean, if you watch Fox panders to a specific demographic, as does CNN and MSNBC. But you got to understand, it's only about profit for these businesses. And what's so upsetting is like the country does not need to be split. This division does not need to be forced down it. I mean, we need solutions on how to bring people together, not divide. And these media places, they understand this and they know this, but it's not profitable for them to do that. You can just look at what you see on the news at night. I mean, what gets more views? The horror, the sad stuff, than anything happy or building. I mean, if people rather pull people down instead of bring them up. And it goes back to that mob mentality. And good people do stupid shit when they get together in a mob. I mean, I'm going to a concert. This is probably a bad example, but I'll be going to a concert next month. Heavy metal, kind of rap, Prophets of Rage, based off Rage Against the Machine. I know the minute I get there with my friends, and we get in that concert, the music starts playing, I'm going to act like a fool. You know what? It is what I know better, but you get people like when you get people do things that they wouldn't normally get caught up to when in the moment and kind of act out. This is the first time that I saw in a major news network that they're actually promoting a libertarian town hall meeting days in advance. I mean, there is actually a countdown clock for this town hall meeting. I mean, that's just amazing. And some of the stuff that you hear coming out from everywhere on what they feel about Trump and what's coming out with Clinton. I mean, it feels like a lose-lose situation, and I can understand it. People are scared. People don't do, and it's turning to hate and anger, and it's just crazy. But again, this division is not only happening here. I mean, you can look at the EU right now. I believe it's called the Brexit. I mean, the Brexit is almost split 50-50 right now, where Britain's trying to decide to stay or leave the EU. I mean, the Brexit was created after World War II and to keep peace on the continent. And people have become so divided and not wanting to live around people with different views or different cultures. They want to kind of go back to the way things used to be. I believe they entered the EU in 79 or 69, one of them. And regardless if you believe it's immigration or just the euro, half of the country wants to get out. How are you supposed to fix that if you have half on one side and half on the other? And that's how wars are started. I mean, how can this be fixed without having the war? How can we just go to the Reconstruction and bypass all that? I mean, you go... What happened in Orlando? What happened in Orlando was absolutely horrific. Whatever you believe, it's just unimaginable. And what came after that was expected, and that was people wanting to ban guns. Personally, I believe firearms save lives. But I do believe that if all guns were banned, gun-related deaths would drop. 100% agree with you. But I also believe that attacks from terrorism would not drop. I mean, and I'm using France as an example. I mean, France has extremely strict gun laws, and unfortunately that did not help nor stop the Paris attacks. I mean, another example would be the drug war. I mean, you can go to any neighborhood, any street corner, and find somebody selling. That's something that is illegal. I mean, what makes you think that firearms would be any different? The only thing that would stop is a law-abiding citizen from owning a firearm. But if somebody wanted to inflict harm or terror, they would still be able to get that. And if all guns were gone, what would happen next? We would convert to fire bombings, cars, planes. Destruction would still come. I mean, the stuff I've been hearing on the rhetoric I hear online is so extreme with beliefs. I mean, just stop, get rid of it. But people need to understand that if you have to defend the people that you disagree with, because if you don't, it's going to eventually happen to you. I mean, if you're exercising your First Amendment right, but you're trying to get rid of the Second Amendment, and what makes you think that eventually our First Amendment rights won't be prohibited in some way or form? I mean, look at the Fourth Amendment. Fourth Amendment is practically gone. The right of search and seizure regulated. How often do you hear you're guilty until proven innocent? I mean, that's what it feels like. I'm sure a lot of people agree with that's what it feels like right now. You are guilty until proven innocent. When did that change? If you look in the 1950s, it was illegal just to be a communist. If you were caught with any communist literature or heard talking about communism, that was enough to put you in jail. Your First Amendment right protects you from that. It's the difference between thinking something and actually doing something. You can have some guy come over here and spew out the most heinous, hateful rhetoric that you have heard, but he has every right to say that. But the minute he acts on it, that's something different. I mean, I see it. I believe that we're destroying ourselves from within. At the beginning of hate, it's happening between families. It's happening with friends. I mean, with me, it's important for me that my friends have complete different views than I do. I mean, how am I supposed to learn otherwise? If I surround myself with like-minded individuals, that's great to have, but how am I going to progress in... And I understand it's sort of like this mob mentality where something happens and we automatically become reactive and we panic and everything becomes short-sighted instead of looking at the long game. And people need to realize that if you don't defend the people who you disagree with, it's going to end up eventually happening to you. A lot of rhetoric that I hear online is extreme. I mean, again, it's short-sighted, and for me, it's a reactive type mode, and I understand that. I mean, that is a human response. That's how we respond. But again, to look at the short-term game instead of the long-term game, it's not going to work. I mean, I don't mean to give a civics lesson, this turn into a civics lesson, but I agree with the Second Amendment. I do believe that firearms keep people safe. I mean, if you feel like you're the person who needs a firearm, you heard me talk about it before, but you have to get training for it. And if you think taking a concealed weapons class and going to the range and putting 50 rounds down range is enough, you're wrong. I mean, this is not like riding a bike. This is something that you have to look at it sort of as a family member, and this is something that you need to practice on a regular basis to become proficient in, because you will revert to your lowest form of training. I mean, you hear that in martial arts all the time. And it's absolutely true. What you put your most focus in is what you're going to rely on back to. And if you choose to own a firearm, my first recommendation is take a tactical medical class and learn how to fix holes if you decide to make holes. I made that mistake myself, not taking a tactical medical class, but once I took that class, my mind was blown from that. So if this is something you decide to do, put the correct amount of time and effort into it, because if you think you're going to purchase a gun, throw it in your drawer, throw it in your safe. It's not going to work, and it's going to end up being turned and used against you if, for whatever reason, you do need to use this. Get a dog. Again, going back, what happened in Orlando was is all devastating, awful. And I have 2 friends who were attending that parade in L.A., and thank God that those police stopped that man who was going over, who looked like to inflict harm, because if something would have happened to them, I would have absolutely been devastated from that. And our views cannot be more different on the topics of the Second Amendment. You have to defend the people you disagree with. But again, tonight I'm going to keep this podcast pretty short. The goal tonight was hopefully to start conversation. Because again, I think my key point that you need, I hope people realize, I hope people just look into, is like you have to defend the people you disagree with. As long as they're not, you have to defend the people that you disagree with, because it will end up happening to you. All right. Like I said, 15 minutes, that's a record. I appreciate all the feedback that you guys have been giving me. I've definitely been taking that into account, trying to change things up. I'd love to do more of these solo type podcasts every once in a while, but again, I do enjoy bringing people on and kind of sharing, exchanging knowledge. I hope you guys have found it very beneficial. Again, keep the comments coming in. I really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
Wow.